We are in Ninth Lit, and we are finishing the Nun's Priest Tale, and we're preparing for tomorrow to do the recitation. But we are doing the Nun's Priest Tale here. Up to this point, it's been kind of a long introduction in a way, because the action really starts now, because he actually sees the fox, and from this part to the end is really short. So there's a lot of build up to this. And clever, but he now sees the fox, and he had just talked about predestination, which again, you're reading a farce tale about chickens and foxes, and the discussion of predestination comes up. To me, that's another example of the mock heroic. He's making fun of heroic, because that's what you get when you read Dante, when you read Homer, when you read Virgil. You get all sorts of their educations in themselves. You get all sorts of discussion of science and medicine and literature and theology. And so he throws in this business about predestination. It's a theological topic. It's another way to make fun of the because that's what you would do. If this were a real epic, you'd have things like that. Do you remember what it is, predestination? Since he brought it up, we did define it. You remember what predestination? It's pre-destination. Yeah.
Isn't it like knowing where you're going to go before you die and afterlife?
Well, yeah. It's not so much knowing, it's the fact that you've been chosen. God has determined where you're going in the afterlife. And it is a biblical concept. It's also called election. Paul uses both terms. Predestination, election is the idea that God, in advance, knew you were going to heaven. Now, the question is, in your particular denomination, what does it mean that he predestined? Does it mean, well, not what it means. On what basis does he predestine you? Does he predestine you before time? And the two choices are usually because he sees into the future, and he sees one day that you're going to accept Christ as your Savior. And therefore, since he knows that, you're already in. He knew that from the beginning. Or did he literally choose you without you having done anything to be saved? And that's the other view of it. And your church, you're going to have to decide in your life what you believe. I thought you had studied that with Dr. Talbot. We have not, because Dr. Talbot teaches theology to juniors or sophomores. So this may be the first time you ever hear of it, but it's a wonderful discussion that only a Christian school could ever have, because they're not talking about stuff like that in public schools. So, and the idea here is that fox shows up. It's predestined by God for the fox to show up, and it's predestined by God for Chanticleer to see him. And it was predestined that he have a warning dream about it. All right, so I'm going to start today, and the Nun's Priest is about to get himself in a little trouble. You'll see what I mean. I'll read and then pass it on. 226. Well, he says, the Nun's Priest says, but I decline discussion of the matter. My tale is of a cock and of the clatter that came of following his wife's advice to walk about its yard on the precise morning after the dream of which I told. Can you tell where he's going on this? Where is he? What's he tempting, or who is he tempting to blame for Chanticleer not following his advice? And so now he gets himself into some trouble that he has to get out of. He goes back to Eve and starts, blaming women. Okay, let me just read it. A woman's counsel is so often cold. A woman's counsel brought us first to woe, made Adam out of paradise to go, where he had been so merry, so well at ease. But, for I know not whom it may displease, if I suggest that women are to blame. This is fragile. There are a lot of women in the company listening to this story. They're not going to, any way more than you would, want to hear women are to blame. Are you kidding? By the way, although Eve was tempted first by Adam, Adam is completely responsible for what his wife did. He could have said, no, you're not. We're not going to do that. He could have stopped it, but he didn't. He went along with it. So God never really, it's never really a blame of the woman Eve, although she was the first one to be tempted. It was Adam's job to protect her, and why he didn't do it. And so that's why Adam, and he also participates in the sin, in the rebellion. But notice he just says, if I suggest that women are to blame, pass over that. I only speak in game. Now what's he do? He's backing away. He's saying, I'm just kidding. Don't get mad at me. I'm just joking, ladies. Don't get mad at me. Read the authorities to know about what has been said of women. You'll find out. These are the Cox words, not mine, I'm giving. I think no harm of any woman living. I don't know. I find that humorous because he said, it's the chicken. Remember, I'm just telling you what the rooster said, not me. So anyway, we'll move to Lady Perla here. Would you read? You can just read one of those. And Zoe, you don't have to read that whole thing. If you want to do that's fine. But we'll just share this last couple, 2 or 3 pages of Kimber. Marilee on her. So could you read?
Merrily in her dust bath in the sand lay Perlo. Her sisters were at hand, basking in the sunlight. Chanticleer sang free, more merrily than a mermaid in the sea, and says how well and merrily they sing. And so it happened, as he cast his eye toward the cabbage at a butterfly. It fell upon the fox there, lying low. Gone was all inclination then to a crow. Cock, cock, he cried, giving a sudden start, as one who feels a terror at his heart. For natural instinct teaches beasts to flee the moment they perceive an enemy, although they had never met with it before.
So what, even you and me, or we have this instinct. When faced with an enemy, what is the instinctive thing for us to do? What? Well, if the enemy's bigger and meaner, it's run away. And in this case, a chicken cannot cannot win out over a fox. So his first inclination is to run away. Notice how the fox responds. And Zoe read, and again, read half of it. Maybe Orion can finish it.
This Chanticleer was shaken to the core and put away. The fox was quick to say, I am his foe, ever so fast away. Are you afraid of me that I am your friend? A cleaner voice I should use to command you on or past this burning upon you. Your sorrow is not even small one. Truly I came to do no other thing than just to lie and to tease you. You know, as Mary played with God, she given any evil
Thank you. So the Chanticleer wants to run. You know, all he has to do is fly up to the roost, and the fox can't get to him. So he's about to do that. What does the fox do? Jump at him? Yell at him? Call him names? Run after him? What does he do? How does he trick him?
He talks to him.
He's nice to him. He says, sir. He calls him sir. He's very polite to him. He says, and he also lies to him. He says, are you afraid of me that am your friend? And what does he say is the only reason he's here? Which is another lie. I was not even spying on you. Truly I came to do no other thing than to lie and listen to you sing. So he's lying. He's
Making them think things that aren't true.
yes. And so he's, but he does one more thing. Not only does he lie and he's nice to him, if Chanticleer flies away, he doesn't have a chance. So he's got to keep him there. What else does he do? He said, all he came to do is listen to you sing. Then he goes on with that. What is he doing there? How is he trying to trick Chanticleer?
He's trying to like get him off guard,
Right, and how's he trying to do that?
by making him like not be worried about the fox, by making him just like think that he's his friend and that he's not gonna like attack him or something.
That's true. And what's another way he tries to do that? You're right on track, but there's something he's doing. First, he starts to compliment his singing. He said, I used to listen to your father. Boy, he had the greatest voice. And I've come, you have such a great voice. I've come to listen to you sing. Is he,
He says, can
on?
you emulate your sire and sing? He asks him to sing again.
Right.
He gets
So
better.
what do we call that when someone is nice to you, compliments you in order to get something from you? What?
Manipulation.
Well, it is, but it's a particular kind of manipulation. Nobody in last period knew this. You could be the victim of this if you're not aware of it. Yeah.
Like the two is sending that tribe. That two, like that thing where they're like,
Fattening the pig.
yeah, friends or.
Yeah, but there's a name for that. When when somebody comes up to you and he says, Freddie, you played a great game yesterday. I don't think anybody on the team played as good as you. You know, you're really smart too, Freddie. What are you willing to do for this person? Pretty much anything
like
you
do
want.
something like nice for them. They're like sucking up. to you.
What's the word?
Is it like bribery?
Well, bribery is when I give you something. It is like bribery. You know, I pay you money to do. It's called flattery. Haven't you heard that word?
No,
Yes, I have.
Oh, come on, Freddie.
sorry.
Flattery. Flattery is when you're nice to somebody in order to get something from that person. So that's what he's doing. And notice this. Tell me if you saw the subtlety of this. The fox says, I used to love to watch your father sing and how he put his voice under control, the pains he took to keep his eyes tight shut in concentration, then the tiptoe strut, the slender neck stretched out, and the delicate beat. What's he doing?
He's like telling them that he's like a good person because like his father's a great person and he had a great voice. Like trying to like show him and saying that how great his family is and how good he is.
So what do we call that?
Flattery.
Right. You didn't know that, right? Before. Now you know.
I've heard the word flattery.
Like
But-
you're looking for like a psychological term.
Oh.
But listen to what I just said. You're not thinking. This is what he. And before you answer, I'm gonna let Fiona. But the rest of you think about it. He's telling the fox is telling Chanticleer. When your father's saying he closed his eyes, he stretched out his neck, and he stood on his tiptoes.
Oh, he's telling him so he can get a good bite at his crop.
Fiona.
You know, to like get in position so you can attack.
That's the position he wants him to be in. And interestingly enough, that's probably how real roosters do it. You know, they kind of blow themselves up like this, you know. By the way, he uses the word strut too. What kind of person struts?
Like a model.
A prideful person.
Exactly. And a model is somebody doing a job, but we associate that with pride, and we associate that with chickens. That's what roosters do. They kind of just, you know, look up, they crow, they're proud of themselves with strut. Anyway, just notice the specific way he's flattering him and what he's trying to do to him. So, Ryan, would you pick it up there? This Chanticleer,
This Chanticleer stood high upon his toes. He stretched his neck, his eyes began.
Yeah, wrong one.
page 227.
That's the very bottom.
Oh, I thought we already got.
It's
Oh,
this
skip
Chanticleer.
the page. This Chanticleer began to beat a wind as one incapable of smelling treason, so wholly had his flattery ravaged reason. Alas, my lords, there's many a
Sycophant.
sycophant, and flatter that fill your courts with cant, and give more pleasure than their zeal forsooth. Then he who speaks in soberness and truth. Read what Ecclesiasticus records of flatters, where treachery, my lords. This Chanticleer stood high upon his toes, he stretched his neck, his eyes began to close. His beak open, with eyes shut tight, he began to sing with all his might. Sir Russell Fox leapt into the attack, grabbing his gorge and flung him over his back. And out he bore him to the woods, the brute, in the moment there was no pursuit.
It happened exactly like we predicted it would happen. He stretches his neck, he gets on his toes, he closes his eyes, and the fox attacks him, grabs him by the neck. When I was a kid, I never saw this, I never experienced this, but my grandmother, apparently, before I was born or about that time, they kept chickens. And if you're gonna have fried chicken, you gotta have a chicken to produce it. So she would go in the backyard and she would kill the chicken. There are a couple ways you can do it, but the primary way, and this isn't all that pleasant, but they would wring the chicken's neck. Have you ever heard that?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I like fried chicken. I eat a lot of stuff like that, you know, you could go to a restaurant. I never think about how that chicken, that meat, that's why some people are vegans or vegetarian, they don't want that, but I don't mind, like in principle, I just don't wanna think about it. But they would wring the neck. In fact, it became an expression. My dad would use it. And, you know, if he got angry at somebody, I feel like I just want to wring his neck. That's exactly what they would do. But anyway, that's the vulnerable part. By the way, they'd wring the neck and then turn him upside down.
Well, I get a
and-
chainsaw sometimes.
I wouldn't want to eat that fried chicken.
Doesn't it do it with like a shoelace? Like it was strangulation, right?
Yeah, basically, or decapitation, you know.
Like they put them in one of those like medieval old things.
We
like,
don't need to go into any more
With their
details.
beaks, with their little claws like this. And the thing-
So anyway, that's the position, and I've got 2 words. They may be on your vocabulary list later. These are SAT words. You want to be good at vocabulary? Well, you read. I think you do, because if you want to be good at those kinds of tests and things, you better be a reader. Sycophant and cant. Sycophant. Top of page 228. Sycophant are those people that follow celebrities wherever they go, stand outside the door, get their autograph. That's a sycophant. It's a follower. It's someone who will do anything in order to be in the presence of a person. Cant, C-A-N-T, is like flattery. It's insincere language. Doesn't have to be flattery. Flattery is directed in a particular way, but cant is just simply insincere language. Those are good SAT words, and I think they're both on your review, on your vocabulary list when we get to that. All right, so Dave, would you start with odestine? What do we call that literary device? He's talking to an idea. Odestine. What? It's an apostrophe.
It's like when the guy in Beowulf was talking to her.
To the earth, yeah.
What did you say, Kent?
Cant, C-A-N-T, without the apostrophe. There's no apostrophe, like I cannot. It's not that.
like thieves can.
Yeah.
What was the definition there?
Insincere language. And flattery is definitely insincere. It has a particular purpose, you know, to manipulate you. It's usually compliments. Cant can be other things, but it's similar.
O destiny that may not be evaded, alas, that Chanticleer had so paraded. Alas, that he had flown down from the beams. Oh, that his wife took no account of dreams. And on a Friday chose to risk their necks. O Venus, goddess of the joys of sex, since Chanticleer thy mysteries professed, and in thy service always did his best, and more for pleasure than to multiply his kind, on thine own day is he to die. O Geoffrey, thou my dear and sovereign master, who, when they brought King Richard to disaster, and shot him dead, lamented so his death, would that I had thy skill, thy gracious breath, to chide a Friday half so well as you, for he was killed upon a Friday too. Then I could fashion you a rhapsody for Chanticleer in dread and agony.
Thank you. Again, notice the language. Oh, Geoffrey, not Chaucer, another Geoffrey. King Richard, all these allusions to English history.
Would that be the Pope?
Geoffrey?
Yeah.
You know, I'll look it up. We can look it up in the back. Remember, they've got, Boethius, Burnell, Geoffrey de Vinsauf, an author of the art of rhetoric who flourished in the 12th century. So,
Oh, okay, never mind then.
yeah, so, good guess. All right, so we'll go to Hayden.
Sure never much a cry for lamentation was made by ladies of high church and station. When Ilium fell and Pyrrhus with his sword grabbed Priam by the beard, their king and lord, and slew him there as the Aeneid tells. As what was uttered by those hens, their yells surpassed them all in palpitating fear, when they beheld the rape of Chanticleer. Dames heard a low, amended sovereign shrieks that echoed up in the anguish to the peaks, louder than those extorted from the wife of Hasdrubal, when he had lost his life, with Carthage all in flame and ashes lay. She was so full of torment and dismay that in the very flame she chose her part and burnt to ashes with a steadfast heart. A woeful lament, louder than shrieks and higher than those of Roman maidens. When the fire consumed their husbands, senators of Rome, when Nero burnt their city and their home, beyond the doubt the near home was their doom.
All right, so one of the questions on your list, one of the questions I'm going to ask you on the test, because it's a major part of this story, is how is it a mock epic? How does it make fun of epic poetry? Here's an example of how that's done. These hens, there are 7 hens or so, they're mourning, they're crying, they're shrieking that their lord, Chanticleer, has been kidnapped and taken away. And they are being compared to the women of what 3 classical cities in the classical age that were also attacked and destroyed. There's 3 cities. What are they?
Canterbury.
Yeah.
Troy, Carthage, and Rome.
Right. So the women of those 3 cities, in fact, women of Troy, I think that was a play, one of the Greek writers, something like that. But anyway, they mourned at the loss of their city and their wives, their husbands and children. And so these hens are being compared to these classical examples. And that's an example of exaggeration and mockery, because these are hens. They're not women of Rome or Carthage or Troy. And so you got the picture. Here's the fox dragging away Chanticleer, who is in his mouth. And I guess we go to Fiona at this point.
Now return again to tell my tale, this blessed widow and her daughters too. Heard all these hens and clamor and odors, and rushing to the door with all the shrieking, they saw the fox towards the street. And on his shoulder Chanticleer stretched black, look, they cried, oh mercy, look at that. Ha ha, the fox, and after him they ran. And the stick in hand
All right, again, this hyperbole comparing to these hens to the women of Troy. There's something else that's going on here. The widow shows up. Remember her at the beginning of the story? It's her farm, it's her house, it's her barn, it's her chickens. They come out, and so you got all the animals, just kind of chaos going on. Tell me what this sounds like. I'm particularly interested if Matthew, the peer, could recognize this. You'll know why when you hear the answer. I'm about 6 lines down. Tell me what it sounds like, even, the description. And on his shoulder, Chanticleer stretched flat. Look, look, they cried. Oh, mercy, look at that. Ha ha, the fox, and after him they ran. And stick in hand ran many a serving man. Ran Call our dog, ran Talbot, Bran, and Shaggy. And with a distaff in her hand, ran Maggie. Ran cow and calf, and ran the very hogs in terror at the barking of the dog. And I read it with a little emphasis. Matthew, there's a reason I would ask you.
Oh, I remember yesterday.
Oh, yeah, my book.
Exactly. So what were you going to say?
Does it sound like a children's story?
Exactly. The author is doing that. Now, there was no Dr. Seuss in the 1300s, but there have always been children's stories. And children love rhythm, they love rhyme, and, just the chaos of the scene. I could picture the children's book, right? You got the dogs, you could see it. Every page has a different animal. Like the first is just the chicken and then you have the chicken and the hogs, chicken and the dogs. Then every page gets longer and longer. And that's also an effort to mock the story, mock the epic story. It sounds more like for children at this point than for, serious literature. And that's on purpose. Yeah.
Oh, can we answer 12 or?
I don't know. Read it.
How does Chanticleer use deception to trick the fox?
Say it again.
How does Chanticleer use deception to trick the fox?
Well, you're just a little bit ahead of us.
All right.
We got to read it, and that's. You found it? Did you just read?
Oh, yes, I did.
Okay, we'll go to Fred. Right? You.
Or there's gonna be 14 though.
Yeah, or one of them.
Yeah.
And now, good people, pay attention all. See how vain fortune quickly changes side and robs her enemy of hope and drive. This cock that lay upon the fox's back, and all his dread contrived to give a quack, and said, Sir Fox, if I were you, as God is my witness, I would round upon this cloud and shop. Turn back, you saucy bumpkins all, a very pestilence upon you fall. Now that I have in safety reached the wood, you do what you like, the cock is mine for good. I'll eat him there in spite of everyone.
All right. I don't know what the question asks, but we have here a situation where Chanticleer is pretty hopeless, but helpless rather. What does he do to out-trick, or at least attempt to out-trick, the trickster, which is the fox? He can't, he has no strength. He's completely helpless, except he's able to at least he's trying to. Fiona, how does he do it?
I feel like he's telling the fox to prove that he got him, he's to be prideful or something.
Yeah, he is doing the same thing the fox did to him. He's appealing to his pride, and so he's telling the fox to do specifically what though? What is he asking him to do?
To speak, to open his mouth.
And what happens the moment he opens his mouth?
He leaves.
Who leaves?
Chanticleer.
Exactly. So that's all Chanticleer's got to do is get the fox to speak, open his mouth and speak. And by the way, he's asking him, why don't you turn around and mock these people? You can tell them, turn back, you saucy bumpkins all. Now that I have reached the wood, do what you like, the cock is mine for good. It's like taunting them. You can't get me. And as soon as he opens his mouth, well, we'll see what happens. Matthew, the Peter.
Where I lost where.
The fox replying.
Page 229,
230.
The fox replied, Faith it shall be done, opened his mouth and spoke. The nimble bird breaking away upon the uttered word, flew high into the treetops on the spot. And when the fox perceived he had got, alas, he cried, alas, my Chanticleer, I've done you grievous wrong. Indeed, I fear I must have frightened you. I grabbed too hard when I caught hold and took you from the yard. But sir, I meant no harm. Don't be offended. Come down and I'll explain what I intended. So help me God, I'll tell the truth and I know it. No, said the cock, and curses on both of us, and curses on us both. And first on me, if I were such a dunce, and let you fool me oftener than once. Never again for all your flattering lies, you'll coax a song to make me blink my eyes. And as for those who blink when they should look, God blowed them from his everlasting book. Nay, rather, said the fox, his plagues be flung upon all who chatter and should hold their tongue.
All right, the fox did what Chanticleer intended. He did fall for the flattery. He opened his mouth, and here goes Chanticleer, who flies to onto a tree. The fox now can't get him. So what does the fox do? Does he curse him out? Does he try to climb the tree?
He tries to tell him to come
It's
down.
like, condemn them to
He's like, that's
no
not what
harm, no harm.
I'm so sorry, I'll take an oath and tell you that I didn't mean to do that.
So he's continuing the same line that he did before. He's doing the same thing.
Oh my.
He's saying, I'm so sorry, did I hurt you? If you'll come down here, I'll explain what's going on. I don't like, hey guys, I don't like liars. I don't think you do either. We lie, right? But we don't like people lie to us. We know how that works, but we don't like it. But I have to admire, oddly, it sounds strange. Sounds like I do like liars. Nobody likes, but I have to admire the coolness in which some people lie, especially when they get caught. Most people, I think, when they get caught, they just give up the ghost. It's over. You caught me. I'm sorry. Forgive me. I won't do it again. That kind of thing. But there are some people that lie, that once you catch them in one lie, they just shift right over to another lie. When you read Huck Finn, you'll see that in the main character. He does it because he's a survivor. He has no ability to protect himself except really lying, and so he does that a lot. But I guess what I'm saying is I like people who think on their feet. I don't like lying, but I like the idea that, man, if you came back with something, I wouldn't just capitulate, I would come up with something else. So to be a good con man, or even a good liar, you have to be fairly smart. It's evil, but it's an evil genius, but it's still, so anyway, he tries to flatter him again. And what's that old expression? I think you fool me once, shame on me.
Fool me
No, on
twice,
you.
shame on you.
You fool me twice. So that's basically what he says. He says, you fool me the first time, and I'm not gonna give in the second time. So, Tim, you can finish this out for us.
Lo, such it is not to be on your guard against the flatterers of this world, of the world or yard. And if you think my story is absurd, a foolish trifle, or a beast and bird, a fable of a fox, a cock and hen, take hold upon the moral gentleman. St. Paul himself, the saint of great discerning, says that all things are written for our learning. So take the grain and let the shaft be still, and gracious Father, if it be thy will. As saith my Savior, make us all good men, and bring us to his heavenly bliss.
So remember, one of the requirements of the stories was that they end with a moral lesson. And we get it right here. It is an absurd story, but there is still a lesson there. What is the lesson? Yeah.
Don't get tricked by lies,
By what kind of lies particularly?
like
Flattery.
flattery.
That is the moral lesson. I want to read this to you. You can write it down. It's a good one. I'm going to give you the reference. Proverbs 29:5. It's short. I want you to write it down. I'll read it a couple of times. Proverbs 29:5. A man who flatters his neighbor spreads a net for his feet. What do you think that means?
You repeat it again,
A man who flatters his neighbor spreads a net for his feet. Tells you right there, that you should avoid flattery because it's like a net catching fish. You know, it's meant to trip you up in some way. Have you ever detected flattery, or have you liked it so much that you just kind of went with it? I know they're lying to me, but it sure sounds good. You ever detected flattery? Ladies, don't let them flatter you.
Yeah.
Guys, don't let them flatter you. If you detect something is not right here,
Yeah, Matthew, man.
I don't trust, all of a sudden you're really nice to me, you, or whatever the case, I just met you, whatever, it's just,
Matthew.
the Bible gives you a lot of great advice, and also, command. So, look at your questions, I like to check them, the ones on both sides, none
Yeah.
precept. You have 12 minutes, but if you have them done already, if there's one you still don't understand, we can discuss it since you're here. If anybody have a question you don't get, well, I'm coming around to check them, so make sure you've answered them.
Oh, my versus things that come to boxing.
All right, what we're doing now, Freddie,
Oh, yeah, we're working on review.
yes, you're doing the review, and, we just need to keep it relatively quiet so people can do that. After you finish the recitation tomorrow, you'll have whatever time's left to work on.
Oh, really? So you like the whole time?
Well, it's gonna take us 20, 30 minutes to do the recitation. I also have some things to hand out to you.
Such a small thing.